Xenomorph XX121 is the perfect killer, ferocious, aggressive, and a ruthless legacy of a superior race. However, it has one strange weakness. It loves women. In none of the films has this alien species ever killed a woman. Of course, you might say this is complete nonsense. What about Joan Lambert? Wasn't she killed? If you were as attentive as I am, you would know that Lambert was actually a man, or rather, used to be one. Wayland Yutani's documentation does not state that John Lambert was born on November 7, 2093. However, at the age of 16, he underwent gender orientation transformation in a specialized converter, becoming a transgender woman. There is evidence of this not only in the official dossier but also in Aliens, 1986. When Ripley tries to explain what happened to the Nostromo tug, we can see the crew members' biographies in the background, where it is stated that Lambert was born male. But later she underwent gender reassignment surgery, an attempt to deceive nature. But what about Private Jeanette Vasquez? The xenomorph definitely killed her, didn't it? Are you sure? She and Lieutenant Gorman sacrificed themselves to stop the swarm of creatures. By detonating a grenade, they sealed off the ventilation passage. This pattern is evident throughout all the films. Xenomorphs do not kill women because they were programmed this way by the engineers. To fully understand this, we need to analyze all the films in detail. Perhaps we are still missing an important hidden clue. So, let's take a closer look at the subsequent sequels. Friends, if you're fascinated by cinematic universes, especially the Alien universe, I have an awesome recommendation for you. On the Third Eye Cinema channel, they break down hidden details, theories, and interesting facts you might have missed. If you enjoyed my video, you'll definitely find even more exciting content there. Be sure to check out the channel, explore their work, and subscribe so you don't miss new videos. The link is in the description. The third film was directed by David Fincher. In this film, everything is much simpler. Ripley finds herself alone among dangerous male criminals with an extra Y chromosome. That's right, all the prisoners suffer from Jacob's syndrome. But why include such a genetic anomaly in the plot? Quite strange. On top of that, Fiorina 161 was once a foundry. Now it's a penal colony, and from the very beginning of its colonization until the events of the film, there were no women on this planet. So, Ripley was simply lucky to land there. And as we already know, xenomorphs love women. That's why, during their first encounter, the creature doesn't kill Ripley. On the contrary, it protects her. Of course, not because she's a woman, but because Ripley is carrying a queen, the future of the entire species. The xenomorph senses the chest burster inside her. Ripley must live. That is the xenomorph's primary objective. So, this film cannot be used to confirm the theory. Additionally, since there are no women on the planet, the xenomorph has no choice in whom to kill. In Alien Resurrection, the story repeats. But this time things are far more complicated. In this film, we have two new women, Sabra Hillard and Annalee Call. Sabra was the pilot of the smuggler ship Betty, and strangely enough, her death is once again never shown on screen. This happens while the survivors are swimming through the flooded kitchen corridor. Sabra falls behind, and a xenomorph attacks her, grabbing her by the leg and dragging her away in an unknown direction. What happens to her, we don't know, because in the scene where the hive is shown, Sabra is not among the victims. The hive mostly contains scientific personnel. In fact, the scene of the xenomorph grabbing Sabra's leg might not have even been in the film at all. Several factors influence this. It's no secret that the entire production of the fourth film didn't go as planned. The director and his team had to rewrite and remove parts of the script, and even characters during filming. Another pilot from the Betty crew, named Rain, was also cut from the film. Originally, it was supposed to be Rain who was dragged underwater by the xenomorph, but there were complications. The underwater scene was the first one filmed, and it was the most challenging. All the actors had to undergo 3 weeks of training in pools with professional divers to learn how to use the equipment and behave naturally underwater. Rain couldn't handle this task, and rather than hiring stunt doubles and slowing down production, the decision was made to remove his character from the film entirely. According to the script, Sabra was supposed to die later, during a large-scale deleted scene set inside a massive botanical garden aboard the Auriga. In this scene, the survivors flee from xenomorphs through the foliage in an electric jeep. However, one of the creatures was supposed to jump aboard and kill Sabra by biting her head. Interestingly, the fifth act of the film, Hell's Garden, was actually filmed, but it didn't make it into the final cut. We only have behind-the-scenes photos left. Another interesting detail, Kim Flowers, who played Sabra, was the only actor in the cast who had never seen a single Alien film before. So, after she was cast, director Jean-Pierre Jeunet asked her to watch all the films before reading the script. When she finally watched them and then read the script, she was the first to be surprised that Sabra was killed by a xenomorph. In an interview, Kim Flowers said she was shocked by how her character was supposed to die, as she had always assumed that xenomorphs didn't kill women. She came to this conclusion after watching the first 3 films. The director liked this idea, and he also decided not to show Sabra's death. Later, he removed her appearance in the hive as well. As a result, we never found out what happened to Sabra. The second woman aboard the Auriga was Annalie Call. And as we remember, the Xenomorphs weren't interested in her. But gender had nothing to do with it. Annalie wasn't human, she was a synthetic. And we know that Xenomorphs are indifferent to androids. You're probably thinking I forgot someone, and you'd be right. I left out scientific assistant Beakers because she managed to escape the ship during the evacuation and thus survived. Let's move on to the next film in the series, Prometheus. Here, everything is quite simple. Throughout the entire story, the Prometheus crew never encounters the alien species. At the end of the film, after Elizabeth Shaw and David leave the planetoid LV-223, a deacon is born from the body of an engineer. This is yet another type of xenoorganism, one that always emerges from the DNA of the space jockeys. But we're forgetting another important detail: the death of all the engineers. After all, they died specifically because of these deacons, and the film provides confirmation of this. When David tries to decipher the hieroglyphs on the wall, he accidentally activates a memory hologram. At the very beginning of its playback, a sound can be heard. The same exact scream can be heard after the birth of the xenoorganism. This detail makes it clear that the engineers were running from the deacon, and we saw the number of dead space jockeys. There were more than a dozen. The xenomorph doesn't kill women, but the engineer race is different in that this humanoid species consists only of males. Another coincidence, you might say? And perhaps you'd be right. Then let's take a look at Alien Covenant, because this time, there were definitely women, and they were killed. The first to die was Kareen, the chief scientific officer of the colonial ship Covenant. This happened after the Neomorph burst out of Leadward. Unlike its other counterparts, this species didn't try to hide, as Xenomorph XX121 usually does. The Xenomorph, right after birth, is too weak and needs to hide and form a cocoon, where it transforms into an adult. The Neomorph doesn't need to do this. Unlike the others, it has a fully developed digestive system. From birth, it is already fully formed, so when it saw a threat in Kareen, it immediately attacked her. It's important to note that, once again, we weren't shown her actual death. We see that after the Neomorph starts chasing Maggie, Kareen is still moving. She is most likely still alive at that moment, but badly injured. The second woman from the Covenant crew to die was Maggie, but her death doesn't count, as she didn't die at the hands of the Neomorph. Instead, she was killed as a consequence of the encounter. Maggie fired a shotgun indiscriminately and hit one of the energy blocks. As a result, the landing shuttle exploded, and Maggie burned alive. Once again, there is no definitive confirmation of the Neomorph killing a woman, but the case of Rosenthal seemingly breaks this entire theory, at first glance at least. Yes, the Neomorph does kill her. Did it really break the rules? Or is the instinct to protect women not ingrained in it at all? The fact is, the Neomorph is David's experiment. The synthetic tried to recreate the creation of the ancient race, which is why this creature lacks the usual traits of a xenomorph. It has no exoskeleton. Instead, its skin is pale white. It lacks the tubular appendages on its back that secrete black resin for hive construction. While it can grow rapidly like all xenoorganisms, its digestive system functions like that of a human. And most importantly, it does not have acidic blood. This species is not even capable of reproduction or hive creation. The Neomorph is simply a failed experiment by David. The android sought to create the perfect organism, but he failed. It is merely an incomplete, underdeveloped species. The Protomorph, however, is a different matter. This is an early version of the classic Xenomorph. On the Covenant ship, it killed a woman, and it initially intended to recreate Lambert's death. It wanted to mate with Upworth. For those who don't know, Joan Lambert's death scene in the first film was heavily edited. The alien's flirtation was removed from the final cut. It didn't attack Lambert outright. Its behavior was strange, similar to courtship. In the end, it simply raped Lambert with its tail. Her corpse was later seen in Alien Isolation, where her injuries clearly show how she actually died. The Protomorph initially intended to do the same thing to Upworth, and we don't know exactly how it killed her since the process wasn't shown in the film. But one thing is clear: this species kills women, unlike Xenomorph XX121. The reason for this is that the Protomorph is yet another but more successful experiment by David. It lacks the programming implanted by the engineers and doesn't understand gender differences. In Ridley Scott's first film, it was made very clear that gender was extremely important to the creature. Every male was either killed or turned into raw material for egg production with facehuggers. Some men were slaughtered immediately, without hesitation. But when the alien got aboard the Narcissus escape shuttle, it hid and observed Ripley. Even after being discovered, it could have easily killed Ripley, but for some reason, it didn't. Perhaps the xenomorph understood that it couldn't survive without her. Ripley could help it escape the Nostromo, or maybe it had entirely different motives. It almost seemed like the xeno-organism was studying the woman. The aggressive creature behaved extremely strangely, for something that had been considered nothing more than a bioweapon for so many years. Then, I think we should take a look at the latest film, Alien, Romulus. After all, there are women in it too, and 2 of them didn't make it to the end. The first one, Navarre, died from a chest burster, so we can cross her off the list. That leaves Kay and Rain. Both of them encountered the terrifying creature, and both survived. Kate was severely wounded by the xenomorph, but was kept alive and taken to the hive, where she was likely awaiting her fate. A facehugger was supposed to implant a larva into her body, but she was lucky. Her brother Tyler found her in time and managed to save her. Rain's situation is also quite strange. When the alien caught her in the elevator shaft, it didn't rush to kill her. But there's one crucial detail. All its kin were already dead. At this point, its main goal was reproduction and repopulation. There was no reason to kill a perfectly suitable host if a facehugger was already lurking nearby. The xenomorph was simply restraining the girl until the facehugger got close enough for a successful jump. One more thing needs to be clarified. Facehuggers don't differentiate organisms by gender or species. Man, woman, bull, or dog, it doesn't matter. They can even attack already infected hosts, but will detach and continue searching for a new one. Even cloned Ripley, who carried part of the xenogenome, was targeted by one of the facehuggers. Therefore, the tendency not to kill women is observed only in the 2012 Xenomorph. This theory holds up throughout almost the entire film series, but there is one case that proves the alien does, in fact, kill women. That case is Aliens, 1986. Among the Marines, besides Vasquez, there were 2 more women, Corporal Colette Farrow and Corporal Cynthia Dietrich. Both of them died on 5546. Unlike Farrow, however, Corporal Dietrich wasn't killed outright, maintaining the established pattern. During the chaos in the hive, many soldiers were slaughtered, but Dietrich survived. The creature grabbed her and carried her off to an unknown location. Her pulse was still visible on the motion sensors, confirming that she was alive. Hicks later pointed this out when he noticed her vital signs on the monitor.
Hey, look! The Sarge and Dietrich aren't dead, man!
But Farrow really let us down. She was the dropship pilot, meaning she wasn't directly involved in the confrontation, yet she still died. Later, during the flight, one of the xenomorphs managed to sneak aboard and brutally killed Farrow, completely shattering the theory. This was the only time we were explicitly shown a woman being killed by an alien. Still, in most cases, the 2012 1-1 xenomorph behaves rather strangely toward the female sex. This instinct is likely embedded at a genetic level. After Alien, Romulus, we learned that if a synthesized pathogen is introduced into a pregnant female organism, an entirely new creature is born, one resembling an engineer. If all xeno-related elements are removed from the genome, an engineer is born instead. This is how they self-replicate, with humans serving as a crucial part of their reproductive cycle. Whether this process can occur without a male is still unclear, but it's possible that if the necessary genome were introduced directly into the fallopian tube, it could reach the egg cell. In that case, an engineer embryo might start developing inside the womb. Xenomorphs may avoid killing women because they serve a higher purpose. All host organisms carry the pathogen, which contains fragments of the engineer's DNA. Part of the pathogen replaces seminal fluid, meaning reproduction is only possible with a female human host. This would explain a lot, and I hope you enjoyed my theory. Let me know your thoughts in the comments.